They weren't just cars, they were visions on wheels. Born in an era of daring design and untamed engineering, these machines didn't follow trends. They split the air with knife-like silhouettes, leaving behind the echoes of a future that never came. These are the forgotten wedge-shaped legends, where imagination, speed, and steel collided in defiance. 1. Ferrari 512 S Modulo, 1970. It looked like it had fallen from the stars. The Ferrari 512 S Modulo was less a car and more a spacecraft made for Earth's fastest highways. Designed by Paolo Martin at Pininfarina, its cockpit was sealed like a fighter jet, a canopy of glass over a pure wedge of aluminum and dreams. There were no doors. You slid forward into the future. Beneath the paneling of 5.0-liter V12 engine, mid-mounted, roaring with 550 horsepower, promised to launch the driver into another dimension. The wheels were partially covered, the stance impossibly low, and the body pierced by geometric air scoops that whispered of mathematical perfection. But it was never meant for the road. This was a sculpture of speed, a concept born to provoke, not perform. Yet in its silence, it screamed louder than anything on the road. It questioned the idea of what a car could be, and in doing so, it became eternal. Modulo wasn't just ahead of its time, it left time behind. Second Maserati Boomerang, 1972. If the future had a signature, then it was sharp. The Maserati Boomerang sliced through convention like a dagger through silk. Designed by Giugiaro, it was a rolling manifesto in angles and edges. A single glance and you could feel the tension, as if the car was holding back a storm of speed ready to strike. A 4.7-liter V8 heart from the Maserati Bora pulsed beneath the rear deck, pushing out 310 horsepower. Inside, the cockpit was pure science fiction, a hub of gauges encircling the steering wheel like orbiting satellites. It didn't invite the driver, it demanded them. Though fully functional, the Boomerang lived mostly on show stands, not because it couldn't perform, but because it already had. It had performed a revolution. It took the design rulebook and shattered it into shards of polished steel. The Boomerang wasn't built for comfort or compromise, it was built to echo, forever, in the minds of those who saw it. 3. Lancia Stratos Zero, 1970. It sat impossibly low, as if crouched for attack. The Lancia Stratos Zero wasn't a car, it was a stealth fighter disguised in copper tones and wedge geometry. Penned by Marcello Gandini at Bertone, it made the world stop and stare at the 1970 Turin Motor Show. With a windshield that was the front end, and entry through the windshield itself, it mocked doors entirely. A 1.6-liter V4 from the Fulvia hummed behind the driver's back, but the engine was almost secondary. The body was the spectacle. Flat, angular, alien. It wasn't designed for comfort or production. It existed to prove a point, that the future would be forged in bold lines and reckless ideas. The Stratos Zero didn't just embrace the wedge, it invented it. And while it never saw the road, it drove straight into the pantheon of design legends. Fourth Bertone Carrabbo, 1968. It shimmered like a blade, coated in iridescent green armor. The Bertone Carrabbo didn't just predict the wedge revolution, it ignited it. Emerging from the pen of Marcello Gandini, it introduced the world to scissor doors, to razor-edged proportions, to a design language that screamed danger in every line. Built on the bones of the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale, it hit a 2.0-liter Phi 8 under its origami of innovation. The profile was like a guillotine in motion, sharp, decisive, and deadly serious. Inside, the interior followed the same angular madness, deep-set gauges, rigid seating, and a sense of theater that made even sitting still feel like motion. The Carrabbo wasn't built to sell. It was built to inspire. And it became the father of all things Countach, Diablo, and beyond. This wasn't just a car show, darling. It was a design detonation. 5. Dome Zero, 1978. It came from Japan, but it didn't come quietly. The Dome Zero was an act of rebellion, birthed by Minoru Hayashi and a band of engineers who refused to wait for permission. With aerospace styling and origami aggression, the dome stood defiant, a symbol of ambition unchained. A 2.8-liter Nissan inline-six rumbled beneath the hood, but it wasn't the power that captivated. It was the posture. Low, lean, and armed with fangs made of fiberglass and fearlessness. With headlights like slits and panels like blades, it looked like it had no place on Earth, which is why it found a place in every dreamer's heart. They wanted to race it at Le Mans. They wanted to produce it. Bureaucracy had other plans, but the Dome Zero left its mark not in miles, but in memory. It was a ghost of greatness, a never caught, never forgotten. 6. Lotus Esprit Series 1, 1976. It didn't just drive, it sliced through air like a paper-thin promise. The Lotus Esprit wasn't a concept, it was a production car that looked like a prototype the world wasn't ready for. Drawn by Giugiaro's razor-straight ruler, it stood on showroom floors like a sculpture lost in time. Its 2.0-liter inline-four engine wasn't explosive, but that didn't matter. Because the Esprit wasn't about brute force, it was about purity. A fiberglass shell, a mid-engine layout, a weight so feather-light it danced through corners like smoke across a canyon. Inside, the cabin was cocooned in leather and edges, tight, driver-focused, serious. But when Roger Moore piloted it into the sea in The Spy Who Loved Me, the Esprit became more than a car. It became a cultural icon. It didn't just look fast. It looked like speed distilled into shape, a wedge not carved by wind, but by will. 7. Aston Martin Bulldog, 1979. It wasn't supposed to exist. Aston Martin had always been about elegance, curves, leather, and British poise. Then came the Bulldog, brutal, belligerent, born of defiance. It sat impossibly wide, barely legal. With gull-wing doors and a body like an ironed-down stealth bomber, it looked more like a military weapon than a gentleman's car. But under that flat-folded armor hid a twin-turbocharged 5.3-liter V8, pushing out over 600 horsepower. The goal? Break 200 miles per hour. In 1979. Inside, digital gauges blinked back in amber glow, surrounding the driver, in a cockpit more suited for flight than road. It was the fastest car Aston had ever made. And yet, they made only one. One ghost. One bullet through time. The Bulldog was Aston Martin's exhale, sharp, unexpected, unforgettable. A blade of British madness pointed straight at the horizon. 8. BMW Turbo Concept, 1972. Most concepts whisper. This one roared, the BMW Turbo Concept was born. For the Munich Olympics. A gift of design to a world watching. Shaped by Paul Bracq, its body bent light like mercury. Gull-wing doors, hidden headlights, a blood-orange shell cloaking cold precision. Mid-mounted was a turbocharged 2.0-liter inline-four, sending 280 horses to the rear in a flash of Bavarian bravado. But more than numbers, it was a beacon. A prototype that pointed the way to the M1, to the future of BMW performance. It had radar-based braking systems, crumple zones, and tech that wouldn't hit production lines for decades. It was a prophecy wrapped in fiberglass. The turbo wasn't made to race. It was made to lead. To show what could happen when engineering met imagination. With no one saying no. 9. Lamborghini Bravo, 1974. It looked like the Countach's angrier younger brother. The Lamborghini Bravo, designed by Marcello Gondini, was meant to slot below the Raging Bull's flagship. But nothing about it felt lesser. Shorter, sharper, lower than belief. With a 3.0-liter V8 screaming at its heart, the Bravo pulsed with potential. Its louvered rear glass, triangular side windows, and slanted nose all whispered a language only the Wedge generation could understand. It wasn't loud in volume. It was loud in shape. Every crease spoke in italics. Lamborghini tested it thoroughly, but they never built it. One prototype, one howl in the wind. The Bravo was a flicker. But even a flicker from Lamborghini could ignite a decade of design. 10th Toyota EX7, 1970. From the land of quiet efficiency came a scream. The Toyota EX7 was unlike anything the company had dared before. It crouched like a panther, draped in steel and shadow, with a nose that pointed like a weapon, and a body that flowed like molten glass cooled into a blade. A 5.0-liter V8 from Toyota's 7M racing program lay in wait behind the driver, a beast caged under the lid of a dream. Inside, the cabin was pure 1970s sci-fi. Deep-set gauges, wraparound dash, and switches that felt like commands. The EX7 was not for the street. It was never for sale. But it was proof that even Toyota, the master of the rationale, could be possessed by poetry. It existed for one reason: to show that Japan could write in the wedge-shaped language of madness too. And for one moment, they spoke it fluently. These weren't just machines. They were glimpses of what could have been: bold, beautiful, and brilliantly insane. If their engines never echoed through your streets, let their shapes echo in your memory. Hit like, subscribe, and join us as we uncover more forgotten steel legends. The future once looked like this: